Welcome to the Writing Gym podcast. In this episode, Annalisa is speaking with Rick Shetty, owner and operator of Daddy Blogger. They're focusing on how to write your expert book and reach your ideal audience. Make sure and let us know how this episode changed your writing in the comments. Happy writing!
Digital Nomad Mastery's Virtual Summit. And here's our co-host, Rick Shetty.
Thank you to our beautiful co-host, Rianne Shetty. She's been helping us with a podcast for the last 320 episodes. And this week, she's actually been helping out with our virtual summit as well. And one of the reasons we do this is just to teach her the confidence, to do interviewing and public speaking and talking to strangers and really helping build up her confidence. That's one of the joys and pleasures of being a digital nomad dad. I call it D&D, is that I don't have to just take my kids to work once a year on, take your kids to work day, but I can have them with me all the time and actively involved with my business and everything I do. So teaching her skills from a young age. And just wanted to welcome everyone to day 3 of our Digital Nomad Mastery Virtual Summit. We've had an amazing 2 days, really setting the foundation. Our first couple of days were all about, firstly, it was about preparation, dealing with the mindset and going from dreaming to actually doing, and the steps needed to actually start this location-independent lifestyle that a lot of people dream of but never actually do. And then the second day was all about the practicalities. So we've dealt with the mindset, and then how do you deal with the practical stuff? So, things like selling your home, maybe buying an RV, planning the trip, and then, obviously setting up the income streams, which will allow you to sustain your travel. And today we're actually talking all about positioning and setting yourself as an authority in your marketplace through things like what we're going to be talking about on this particular segment, which is book publishing, that really sets you apart from all the other people who don't have a book. So how to be an expert through books. Our guest later on today, Kevin Hoon, is going to be talking about media. We have some guests talking about how to be a speaker, social media. So there's a lot of ways that you can position yourself and stand out. And for the last few days of the summit, we'll be focused a lot more about creating products and selling them online, and also all of the different ways that you can make profit. There's literally dozens and dozens of ways, and our speakers, our 30-plus speakers, are going to be covering a lot of the different ways, everything from teaching ESL to social media marketing to setting up an e-commerce store, an FBA store, being a professional paid speaker, doing private coaching, mastermind groups, even running a virtual summit, even running retreats and seminars and events, which actually our guest today does, and Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, which is a hot topic nowadays. So we're going to be talking about that, membership sites, creating product bundles, blogging, podcasting, video blogging, YouTube ad revenue, affiliate marketing, and much more. So we want to get into this segment. It's all about publishing a book. So who here wants to publish their own book? I know for me, I actually had a dream ever since childhood. I had a big library. I was always a big reader. And I always dreamt that I would have my own book with my own name on that book. And finally, actually 5 years ago in 2012, I published my book on Father's Day. It became an Amazon bestseller, and it really changed the game in my business. It led me to media interviews and speaking engagements and more clients, and it just established me as authority in the space of fatherhood and parenting. So I'm super excited to welcome our guest today. Her name is Annalisa Parent. She's the founder of Date with the Muse, and she's going to be talking all about how to write your expert book. Not just a book, but the expert book. And this is definitely relevant for digital nomads or entrepreneurs. And also, if you're thinking about just writing a memoir of your travels and just documenting it through book form, maybe you're turning your blog, your travel blog into a book, you're going to learn some great insights today. So Annalisa, welcome to the summit. How are you doing today, my friend?
I am well. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being on. So super excited for this segment because I'm a big advocate of people writing their own books. And, it's great to have an expert like yourself on the summit today. So to start off, before we get into all the nitty gritty of writing your book, why don't we get to know you a little bit better? If you want to do a quick introduction and share a little bit more of yourself today, Annalisa.
Sure. So I am a writer. I have my own expert book as well. And I'm also the senior editor of a publishing house. And we specialize in helping entrepreneurs to write a high quality book that people will want to read. And we also publish and market that book for our entrepreneur authors. So writing is my passion. I've been writing and publishing since I was 9. My first poem got published when I was 9 years old, and I was hooked from day one. So longtime writer. I love working with writers, and I'm super excited about what we've got going on in 2018 for entrepreneurs.
Definitely stay tuned. Annalisa is going to be sharing about an amazing retreat in Australia. If you're a digital nomad, or even if you're not, if you just want to get over there to beautiful Australia and be part of Annalisa's amazing event, you'll be finding out about that later on in the segment. So I'd love to start off with why. This is typically what I start off with. Most of my speakers, they start with why question. Why do you want to travel? Why do you want to become an entrepreneur? And now the question is, why do you want to, and why should you become an expert author, Annalisa?
Yeah, I mean, now is a great time for that. Being able to showcase your expertise to really get your name out there, to be perceived as an expert. These are all really powerful things that entrepreneurs can do, fairly quickly and easily. There are a lot of programs out there that emphasize speed. We emphasize quality. Once you've got a quality message out there in the world, people really flock to you. I can't tell you, it's been just over a month that my book has been out, and the response from people who read my book and then want to work with me is amazing. And that's really powerful. And you don't have to be fixed to anyone's face in the world for that to happen. You can live that digital nomad lifestyle and still be an expert because people are buying your book. They can read your ebook. It's available everywhere. It's a super powerful tool to grow your business.
It is definitely a super powerful tool, one of the most powerful ones, because it really differentiates yourself. Because nowadays there's so many businesses, pretty much anyone can become an entrepreneur nowadays. Launch a website, create a business, and then start getting the clients. But then, how many people really have a book compared to how many people dream of doing it and how many people actually have one? So definitely a great way to set yourself apart and position yourself as that go-to expert authority. So when people have this idea to start a book, how do they go from the idea stage to actually doing it? What would you say are the very first step?
Yeah, so one of the things that I focus on with writers, regardless of what they're writing, whether it's a book or a blog post or an article for a magazine, is really about clarity. So people really want to have that clarity. So knowing what it is that you want to say, knowing what it is that you deliver, knowing who your audience is, that's really step one. And certainly we work through that as part of our process together. In the program, that's really step one. And I'd be really happy, Ricky, to share with your audience. I do have a free download that people can access that will really help them to work through, what are the questions that we ask when we're looking for entrepreneurs to get some clarity. So I'd be happy to share that with the people who are participating in the summit.
Yeah, absolutely. If people are interested in getting that resource, I'll actually have that link below, so you'll be able to just click through and grab a copy. When you're starting out, I think there's a lot of obstacles, in terms of the mindset. So what would you say I'd like to deal with both the mindset and the practicalities of actually getting that book out there on paper or, firstly, obviously on keyboard and then onto the computer?
Yeah, it can be scary to say I'm an expert, even if you've been acting as an expert for a long time, even if you've been on stage or on television, you're clearly an expert, you know what it is that you're talking about. It does take some courage to do that. And so a huge part of the work that we do is, what does it take to step into that space and say, hey, world, I'm an expert? And not just to say that you're an expert, but what does it take to have that presence, to be that expert? And how do experts convey their information in a very clear way that maybe a beginner or someone who's a hobbyist might not express themselves in that way, right? Entrepreneurs know their materials so well that they can be very flexible around that. And what does it look like in a book? It takes the courage to step into that and then to put it down and to say, oh my gosh, people are going to read this. My name is on the front cover. People are going to see that. That's me. All of those things are really scary, powerful, amazing, kind of all in one big ball. And we talk about that a lot because it's a huge part of the process.
And I think a lot of people had that fear around the expert title. Some people just put it out there, they're expert, or they're specialist, but a lot of people actually have these insecurities, self-doubts. What makes me an expert? Should I call themselves that? So what makes someone an expert? Can you just call yourself that, or does it take some actual credibility behind you?
I mean, I suppose you could call yourself an expert. I could tell you I'm a baseball expert, and then you could start asking me questions, and we would find out really quickly that I am not a baseball expert. So, in my mind, if I wanted to be a baseball coach, not only would I have to know the rules of the game, but I'd have to have a long track record behind me of people who I'd taught to play baseball. They made it into the major leagues. They were successful. Then I could say that I was an expert baseball coach, right? And so I think that authority, that you could ask me anything, Ricky, about what I call myself an expert in, and 99% of the time I'm going to be able to give you a really helpful answer. Now, that doesn't mean that, I'm not a baseball coach. I'm a writing coach. I don't know everything that there is to know about writing. I don't think any person could, but I know a whole heck of a lot. And I've got a lot of strategies. I've got a long track record of people behind me who have finished books, who have published books, who have become bestsellers, New York Times bestsellers. And that's a big deal.
Yeah, definitely having some kind of track record, maybe some case studies of people you helped. I think the time is definitely important in terms of that expertise status. There's actually a great book by Robert Greene called Mastery. It talks a little bit about the whole process for going from amateur to a specialist to expert to a master, and definitely a long process in that. So curious to know about these 3 steps. The first, you create the book, and then you market it, and then the big question is monetizing it. So what would you say are some tips in terms of actually getting in front of that keyboard and starting to write? Because at the end of the day, getting that book published isn't the hardest thing. It's actually getting started and getting done.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. The publishing, I suppose, is the least difficult. The bookends are really the hardest. So getting it written and getting it sold. And that's why our program focuses on those 2 things. We publish the books for our clients as well, but that's not the most important part, because as you point out, getting it written is super important, and the fear that you were talking about before plays a big role in that. People are afraid, even they sit down in front of the keyboard and they say, oh, I don't think I really actually have anything to say, right? That also comes from fear, because certainly they have something to say, they're just not feeling it right now. So, what we've found is that having support and feedback are really 2 of the very best tools that you can use to get that done. Because once you've got the support and the feedback, you're innately going to have the accountability you need to sit down on a regular basis, whether that's every day, every Saturday, whatever schedule you set up for yourself to get the writing done.
Yeah, having some kind of support system is definitely a key. A mastermind group, friends, a spouse, business partner, definitely people who can give you feedback, maybe creating a book launch team who can cheer you on, etc. So you mentioned the support. What about actually, I know you have your book's all about the pantsters approach versus the preparation. Tell us about those 2 kind of polar opposites, if you want to call it that. Some people are the planners and some people are just the doers. And any tips on which you would recommend?
Yeah, if you're writing an expert book, I'm a firm believer in an outline, believe it or not. So my book for fiction writers is How to Write and Revise a Novel Without an Outline. I believe that creativity can flow in a very non-linear way. And I think that you certainly could brainstorm your expert book. You could, use some mind mapping and that kind of thing. But when it comes to the actual writing, the linear quality of an expert book is one of the most important attributes. And so you need to have that level of clarity in your ideas and your themes before you start laying out the actual paragraphs. You can do it the other way if you want, but you are going to end up with an almost untangleable mess. It's very difficult to sort out messed up, jumbled up nonfiction. Fiction is a little bit more manageable in funny ways, but clarity before you start, I would say, is probably the most important attribute of writing a nonfiction book. So, I mean, that's just a weird quirk about me. When I write fiction, I absolutely don't use an outline. But when I write nonfiction, and when I wrote my book on how to write fiction, I had an outline. And that's really important. And that's something that we help people with in the program. I think it was Benjamin Franklin, I believe, who said an ounce of prevention is worth a ton of cure. That's a total awful paraphrase. But the point is that, the preparation that we do for writing the book makes it really easy to sit down in front of the keyboard and actually write the book. And that really, the thinking part is the hardest part. What am I going to say? How am I going to say it? What anecdotes am I going to include? Do I want quotes? Do I want case studies? All that thinking is essential. So I would say do that first, spend some time doing that, and then the writing just flows. The writing is not the hard part.
It actually can be, though, sometimes, right? I mean, a lot of us who are avid writers, I've been a blogger for 5 years. I think I've written about 1,000+ articles. I have that book as well. But there are times when I actually really struggle with the writing process just because I go through these periods where I'm not as motivated, or I'm just, I go through the busyness or the lack of discipline. And I think we all struggle with that. And there you have the term, the writer's block. So any suggestions there to deal with the writer's block that a lot of us who are passionate writers actually struggle with as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we're talking about nonfiction, a lot of writer's block comes from not knowing what to write. I mean, sometimes I guess we're in the middle and we don't know how to organize it. And I think time is really a friend there, stepping away. If you're stuck on chapter 2, just give it a break, move on to chapter 3, come back to chapter 2 another day. Giving yourself that time and that space, it's sort of like, I don't put together model airplanes or model boats or anything, but that tedious amount of detail, I can imagine that if you were doing that kind of project, you might be like, okay, I just need to take a step away. And I feel like writing can be that too. When we get too down in the details, it gets really frustrating. We just need to take a step back, give ourselves some time, move on to another project, and come back to it when it feels less frustrating.
Any other tips regarding the whole discipline? What do you suggest, writing once a week or daily or in the mornings or evenings in the same space or different spaces? I think that discipline element is very important as well. Any tips there?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the quote memes that's floating around with my name on it out there in the universe is find the writer you are and be that writer. And that's really the most important tool. I can say, Ricky, you absolutely must write first thing in the morning. And maybe that's not the time for you. You're a night owl and you want to write in the middle of the night. And that's when you're feeling most creative. Then I've done you a disservice by telling you what works, for me or for other people. So, all of those factors that you just said are important factors for writers to know about themselves. So if I'm a morning writer, well, dang it, I better be writing in the morning. If I have to write every day or it's not going to happen, I better be doing that. Or, if I'm a weekend warrior and Saturday mornings are prime time for me, then that's the writer I am and that's the writer that I should be. So, I think one of the things that gets in the way, if we're talking about fear, is that negative self-talk, right? Like, we get this idea like, oh gosh, I should be a better outliner. Oh, I should be a better morning writer, and I should write for 2 hours, and I should get 10,000 words a day done, right? And we end up down this rabbit hole of negative self-talk. And so like we take a deep breath and we say, who is the writer? Who I am. Okay, I'm a night owl. I'm going to write at night. I can write 1,000 words at a time in a sitting. That's the writer I am. I'm going to be that writer, and just accepting that and moving forward from there.
Awesome. So you obviously you go through the writing process, and then I think the other thing that really holds people back is actually getting it published, because there's literally a barrage of ways to do it. Everything from traditional publishing to self-publishing to kind of the hybrid model. So what tips would you give there in terms of actually getting the writing published?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I'm a little biased because I'm the senior editor of a hybrid publishing house. And in my mind, a hybrid publishing house gives you all of the benefits of both self-publishing and traditional publishing, in that by using a hybrid publishing house, you're getting all of the power of the publishing house for the marketing. You're getting all of the benefits of being in bookstores and libraries like any other traditionally published book. So there's a little less work to do there when you knock on the door of neighborhood bookshop. But also, you know, going to the advantages of self-publishing, the authors that we take on to work with have a lot of say in what does the cover look like, what does the interior look like, what font are we going to use, how much white space on a page, all of those things that if you went with a traditional publishing house, they'd be like, here's your book, take it, you know, like we put it together, this is the way it looks. You know, we're giving our authors a lot of tips because we are up on the latest market research. We know what people are picking up. We know what people are buying. So we're looking at it through a marketing lens. We know that our authors are looking at it through an artistic lens. And there's some work that happens in tandem there so that we are getting the very best product for our authors' brands, their businesses, and to get their message out into the world.
One of the other big questions people have is the whole ebook versus print book, or both. Would you suggest starting off as an ebook writer and then going to print, or publishing print first, then ebook, or both simultaneously? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. People ask me that a lot. That's one of my frequently asked questions. And we advise doing both at the same time. That's what we do. We publish both the print book and the ebook at the same time. And our reason for doing that is because you're reaching your maximum audience at that point. You know, some people like me really like to hold a book in their hands. Some people like to read on the go on their phone. Some people, you know, I just spoke at a conference in Nigeria via teleconference, not in person. And so the people who wanted to buy my book there weren't going to buy a print copy. They wanted that ebook because they're very far away from me. You know, so it allows you to reach your maximum audience. Everyone's going to get a really great interface. And then we follow that up with an audio book if that's right for the entrepreneur's marketing plan.
Awesome. Great tips there. And obviously you need to have a good cover because, you know, they always say don't judge a book by its cover, but actually people do. The cover is the first thing people see, and you need to have the good graphics, a good title, good subtitle, good author, you know, the look of the feel, even the back cover. So any tips there so that people won't actually judge the cover negatively?
Yeah, I mean, if you decide to self-publish and not use a traditional or hybrid publisher, then absolutely hire a professional. Do not go get some free image off of Google and turn it into a cover, right? That's what gives self-publishing a bad name. No matter how talented you think you are, you know, I said, I'm not a baseball player. I'm not a graphic designer. I don't design my own covers or my own stuff. I hire somebody who understands that. You know, over here at the publishing house, we've got a whole team of people who specialize in that. And I trust them to do their work in the same way that they trust me to do my work. So absolutely hire a professional. If you have a concept, bring that concept to a professional for execution.
Yeah, definitely. With my book, I had an amazing graphic designer who did my cover, and people rave about how much they love it. And I actually turned it not only from the book cover, but actually a big pull-out banner, which I can use in my book signings and trade shows and speaking engagements, etc. So once you actually, write the book, you get it published, get the great cover, get it edited, etc. And you got to actually get it out there into the marketplace. So any tips for actually marketing? Because you could have the greatest book in the world, but if it sits in your basement or the back of the car, what good is it? What good is it to you? But especially, what good is it to all of your readers that you're doing a disservice for because they need to read that book? So how do you get it out there into the marketplace?
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, Ricky, because I would say that this is the number one mistake that I see entrepreneurs making when it comes to their expert books. They think all they need to do is write it. And that's certainly an important part because you can't sell a book if you don't have a book. But beyond that, getting that marketing in and, some of the things that we have our entrepreneurs thinking through are pre-sales so that your books are sold before it even comes out, before it's even in your hands. You've sold copies of your book. That's super important to all of our marketing plans. We do customized marketing plans for each one of our entrepreneurs, but they all have some kind of strategy for pre-selling. So I think that's the biggest tip that I can give is, one, don't make the mistake of thinking you don't need to market. And two, don't forget that pre-sales can be really, really, really important to your overall marketing plan.
Yeah, I just want to add to that about the pre-sale element is actually marketing a book before it's even created. I remember with my book, I was launching it on Father's Day, but I actually made it public in January, which actually forced me to write it. I said, okay, on Father's Day this year, I'm actually going to publish my very first book. And at that point, I hadn't even written the first word. And because Father's Day is in like June, in North America anyway. In that 6-month time period, it actually forced me, because I made it public, Father's Day, I'm going to have a book. So it was actually a great accountability system to have that public accountability. So yeah, highly recommend that pre-selling and pre-marketing and just making it public that you're going to write that book. In terms of marketing, in terms of the practicality of it, social media, email marketing, what would you say are some of the key offline and online ways you can market the book?
Yeah, so the proportion to which you're going to use the various tools is going to vary based on what an individual entrepreneur's goals are, but you raise some important ones, right? So your email list, how you're leveraging social media, whether that's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook groups, Facebook ads. For some people, Pinterest is going to be a really great place to meet their audience. For some people, Snapchat might work better. So really knowing what those different channels are to get your message out are really, really, really important. And then there's an in-person element. Some people are extroverted, some people are introverted, so their comfort level around that is going to be different. But you're always going to want some kind of in-person marketing. Are you doing speaking gigs? Are you doing small workshops? Are you running retreats? So having, building out all of those different elements so you know exactly what your strategy is and how you're going to leverage each one of those tools in proportion to one another to really get your book into the hands of people who want to read it, who need your message, and then who want to hire you.
That's great tips there. A lot of people, they don't even think of the whole thing about doing a book launch or book signings. I actually share a little bit about how I did mine, but I ended up doing a book trailer. That was one of the ways I marketed. I had a friend of mine who's an awesome videographer. He created a great book trailer. It was about 90 seconds, just sharing exactly what the book is about, how people can buy it. And then I did a book launch, and I ended up partnering up with my local church that we attend. And our church is actually a pretty big Pentecostal church. So there's about 2,000 people coming every Sunday. And I asked the pastor, I said, hey, I'm writing this book about fatherhood. And obviously the church is all about supporting families and fathers. So they're like, yeah, let's promote it as Father's Day, and it resonates with the message of our church. So I ended up actually doing my book launch on Father's Day at my local church because it ended up being on a Sunday morning. Actually, there was about 2,000 people at my book launch. They didn't all come for the book launch, obviously, but they came for the service. And then the pastor actually went up on stage and he said, "Hey, one of our members, Rick Shetty, he's a passionate father, as most of you know, and now he's written this book." And I ended up actually doing the book signing after the service in the foyer. And it was amazing because there's like 2,000 people at the service, and there was about 50 people who had lined up around the foyer just to get my book and get it signed and dedicated to a dad in their life. So, and I have all these pictures of the book signing and the book launch. So it was such an amazing moment. So if you can leverage, things like that, maybe leverage your book launch with a trade show or a speaking engagement or a conference or something like that. I think those are kind of my suggestions. Any thoughts there regarding video book trailer or a book launch or book signings?
You know what I love about what you said, and the tip that I can give based on what you said is that outside of the box thinking, right? Like getting really creative about who your network is, who your community is. That was a really perfect fit for your church, who, as you said, was really committed to family. Now, if you had written, how to be a great baseball coach, that probably wouldn't have worked in that venue, right? So you had to do some creative thinking to think about, who are my communities? Where does my book fit with that? Who's going to be happy and excited about reading this book and really putting that book in those places? So I think you're a really good example of the tip that I would give, which is, get creative, think outside the box, and remember what communities and networks you're already a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely agree there. So the whole thing here is you got to write the book for money at the end of the day, like either selling the book and making profit there or leveraging the book to actually get clients or speaking engagements. So tell us the whole area of book monetization.
Yeah, so a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that the book is going to make them millions. And, Stephen King might make millions on his books by now, but, the rest of us humble people just kind of plod along. So, it's going to give you some nice pocket change, but it's not going to be a revenue generator that's going to create a lifestyle that probably most of us want to live. So that's an important tip to keep in mind, that your expert book is a tool. It's not a book, it's a tool. And that tool, its intention is to reach people, your ideal people, your tribe, as Seth Godin says, to find your tribe so they can find you, identify you, and want the help that you have to offer as a coach, as an entrepreneur. And so it's really bridging that gap between all you have to offer the world and the people who need that thing that you offer. So when we think about monetizing a book, we're really thinking about how can this be a tool to do what I want to do as an entrepreneur.
Awesome. And in terms of the book sales on things like Amazon or Barnes and Nobles or bookshops, how would you say, obviously Amazon's a little bit easy to get into, but traditional bookshops, I think, is still important. Nowadays, everything's going online. And obviously, we're talking about digital nomadism and online marketing. A lot of us digital nomads don't want to carry around books in our backpacks. But still, it's really important to get yourself out there on bookstores and bookshops, physical and digital. So any tips there about getting yourself on both the online and the offline?
Yeah, so, I know that you're having Kevin Hoon come on to talk about publicity, and this is very connected to this topic. So here's what happened to me recently. I was featured on the front page of the newspaper, and then people went to the local bookshops to buy my book. Now, wouldn't I have looked foolish had my book not been in the local bookstores? And it was, and they bought it, and yay, everybody was happy. So how did I do that? Well, the power of a traditional publisher. That doesn't mean that my publicist and my team didn't have to do work to get it into the bookshops. There is still work to be done. But anytime that you're publishing with a traditional publishing house, you've moved beyond Amazon's world, and you've moved into Barnes and Noble and, whatever, your corner bookshop and, all the bookshops in your county. And it's really easy, especially if you're a digital nomad, wherever you are, you can go into a bookshop and say, hey, will you carry my book? And they'll say, well, right. And you're in the system that all of the libraries and bookstores throughout the entire world are in because you've published with a traditional publisher, and they can just get your book like that. It's very easy. And you know, bookstore owners are people like all the rest of us, and the easier it can be for them, then the easier it is for us. And that's really, really, really important. Carrying around your copies and asking every bookshop you pass on your travels throughout the world to carry your book sounds like a pain. I would not want to do that. So, you know, as those of you out there who are thinking about a book, as you're thinking about it, this is a really important question to think about your end goal. Do I just want a book, or do I want a book that's going to be available to all libraries and bookstores? And if you want a book that's available to libraries and bookstores, that's going to impact how you choose to write and publish your book.
Awesome. Can you also touch on the whole area of the continuity, the longevity, the sustainability of the book? What I found in you know, my entrepreneurship journey is I meet a lot of entrepreneurs who have actually written a book. It might have been like 5 or 10 years ago, and they've just kind of like got discouraged. Maybe it didn't sell well, or they've moved on, and it's kind of like they are expert authors, but you don't even know it. And I kind of get surprised over and over that, oh, you're an author. I had no idea, because they hardly write about it on their website, or they don't talk about it, etc. So can you talk about the whole longevity element? It's not just writing the book once and boom, you launch and then move on to the next thing, but talk about the long-term element of it.
Sure. And I mean, this ties into what I was saying about your book as a tool. And here's my suspicion for people who kind of give up the ghost on the book. It didn't work as a tool in the way that they wanted it to, and so they're convinced that it didn't work, doesn't work, won't work. And that might be true for any given book out there. But the important thing, you know, if you hand me a hammer, Ricky, and I hold it upside down and start banging on the nail with the handle, like, I'm not using that tool the way it was intended to work. It might get the nail in the wall, but it's going to take me an awful long time. And I think that people are doing that with their books and then saying, oh, toss it out, this hammer doesn't work, this book doesn't work. Well, they're not using it in the way it was intended to be used. And so again, if we back up to that beginning step and we think, what are my goals for this book? What do I want it to do for me? That's why we have a really firm plan from the get-go. That's why our authors write the book at the same time that they're marketing the book, so that we've got all of that down and we're really leveraging that tool. You know, if we go back to that hammer analogy, we've got that like nail gun. You know, we're like boom, 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 boom. We're really getting in all of the quality. We're maximizing that tool so that it really can grow people's businesses and do what it's supposed to do.
Awesome. You know, it's been great, all of your insights and wisdom on this topic. I know you do a lot of support for authors. So tell us about some of the ways that people here on our summit can actually get your support and your advice and your tips and your coaching and your programs.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you mentioned at the beginning, Ricky, we've got a retreat coming up in 2018 in Australia, outside of Melbourne, in the Dandenong Mountains. That's wine country of Australia. Very beautiful from what I hear. Haven't gone there yet. So the way we work is a little different. It's not just a retreat. We do 8 weeks of preparation, as I've talked about, to write the book and put together the marketing. And then we meet for a retreat, and then there are a couple months after that where the book is produced. So we currently are enrolling in that program, and I know you have the link and you'll post it out. We're currently accepting applications. We've got a couple of slots left, so if people would like to apply, we'd love to hear about that. It's a comprehensive program. It includes everything that I've been talking about: the writing, the marketing, the sales, the retreat, the whole shebang. Other than that, certainly they can get in touch with me via the website if they want to talk about their project and what we offer as far as publishing and support in that way. If you want to meet me in person, I'll also be in Denver speaking at the Gary Barnes Business Mastery Boot Camp in January. So drop me a line if you'd like to chat. You can get in touch with me via your website, and certainly take advantage of Ricky's link that he's going to throw up about how to get some clarity in your writing.
Awesome. I'll definitely have that link below. Annalisa, it's been a joy to connect with you again. If you want to hear more about Annalisa's personal journey and her book, and a little bit more about herself, definitely check out our podcast where I had a chance to go into depth about her and her own book. But on this one, we're definitely wanting to add as much value as possible to all of our Summit viewers and listeners here today, and I highly encourage people to get over there to beautiful Australia. I ended up was spending 3 years of my life over there in Sydney, Australia, back in my early 30s. Now I just turned 40, so yeah, about 7, 8 years ago I was in Australia, and I absolutely loved it. So it's a great place to do a retreat. So, and as digital nomads, that's one of the beauties. We have the freedom and flexibility to work from anywhere around the world, including here in Argentina, or over there in the US where Annalisa is, and also in Australia where the retreat's going to be. So thanks again, Annalisa, and we'll catch up with you soon. Thanks again. And thanks everyone for tuning in to this segment from a Digital Nomad Mastery Summit. It's only day number 3. We have a lot more to go. So make sure you sign up for updates on our website, digitalnomadmastery.com. Stay tuned for Cyber Monday, and also this the whole weekend, the big sale coming up. So enjoy your Thanksgivings, and enjoy the rest of the segments, and enjoy all of your travels around the world. So thanks everyone for tuning in to this segment from a Digital Nomad Mastery Virtual Summit.